Ok, muy buenos días. Vamos a comenzar el webinar a Fruta, Nuevas Oportunidades para la Fruta Fresca en E-Commerce. Le damos la bienvenida a la alta asistencia que tenemos, ya llegando a las 100 personas. Agradecemos que puedan conectarse con nosotros. Les recordamos que este evento va a ser en inglés, pero cuenta con traducción simultánea. En la barra de su aplicación Zoom hay un botón que dice interpretación en español o interpretation si lo tienen en inglés. Si no aparece ese botón, deben apretar los 3 puntitos y colocar el idioma español, donde recibirán en vivo traducción al español. Queremos agradecer su participación. Recordar que este evento cuenta con la participación de speakers de 3 continentes y le agradecemos su participación. Para hacer preguntas y respuestas está habilitada el botón pregunta y respuesta, que serán contestados en vivo, de ser necesario, para aclarar dudas, y las preguntas al final para nuestros speakers. Thank you everyone for connecting. Thank you our speakers. Ahora lo dejo con don Sharif Cristian Carvajal, nuestro Marketing Director para Europa y Asia, que va a presentar a la gente. Que tengan un muy buen evento.
Muchas gracias, Ignacio, y muy buenos días. Good afternoon, good evening to our colleagues from the US, China, and Europe. Hoy vamos a presentar justamente el seminario Nuevas Oportunidades para la Fruta Fresca en E-Commerce. Tenemos hoy día con nosotros Una Wang, que es gerente comercial de la plataforma Jingdong Fresh en China. Tenemos también al señor Jason Gillespie, de la empresa Shopkick en Estados Unidos, y finalmente a la señora Nelly Hajdu, de la Asociación de Importadores, Distribuidores y Cadenas de Retail de Fruta Fresca en Europa, Freshfell. Vamos a comenzar con una presentación de nuestra colega Karen Brooks, que va a dar una visión global de la situación de e-commerce para introducir el tema. Thank you very much, Karen. Over to you.
Thank you, Sharif. And good morning, everyone. Good evening to those of you who are about to go to bed, and happy day to those of us who have just woken up. Today's speakers will be addressing e-commerce opportunities in China, the US, and Europe. But before they start, I would like to give you a clear picture of the size and scope of the global e-commerce market. So as we all know, 2020 brought unprecedented growth in e-commerce throughout the world, whether in China or the UK, the US, or India. Although total retail sales declined by 3%, online sales grew by an estimated 27.6% in 2020, reaching $4.28 trillion. Projections for 2024 are $6.4 trillion, which would be a further increase of an amazing 49% in just 4 years. And if we look at 2021, well, it is shaping up to be another strong year for e-commerce. Online sales are projected to climb 16.8%, reaching about $4.9 trillion. And of course, when you talk about e-commerce, China definitely needs to be part of the conversation. I mean, just look at the chart on this slide. China alone will produce $2.779 trillion in e-commerce sales, about 57% of all e-commerce sales worldwide. And in a country of many firsts, China will become the first country in history to transact more than half of its sales digitally. The largest region for e-commerce is clearly Asia Pacific, followed by North America with a 20% share and Western Europe at 12.6%. And here are a few fun facts for you. Although I struggle to see anything on my phone, around 51% of online shoppers conduct purchases via their smartphones. And according to research I saw, there are over 2 billion digital buyers in the world. Despite the rapid growth in e-commerce, there are still questions by many about the size of grocery e-commerce. And sure, while groceries still aren't the most popular online category, there has been phenomenal growth in this area. In Europe, the online grocery channel grew by 55% in 2020, with the highest growth rates, based on what I've seen, in Sweden, the UK, Spain, and Italy. In China, grocery share of online sales is still relatively small, but consulting firm McKinsey projects that the online share will rise to between 18 and 22% by 2022. And finally, there's the US, where no one ever thought that grocery e-commerce sales would nearly double between 2019 and 2021. So hopefully this has painted a clear picture of both the size and relevance of e-commerce. Our speakers will show you what's happening in China, the US, and Europe. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Karen, for such a great summary. Now it's my pleasure to present our colleague Una Wang from JD Fresh, who will give us a summary presentation in regards to the situation in China.
Thank you, Sherry. Could you let me know whether the screen is shared successfully?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good morning to most of you. This is Una from JD Fresh, and we are glad to share some of our aware about the e-commerce business development in the China market. And I will gonna introduce our company first. JD.com as the largest retailer in China, and we are also the first Chinese e-commerce company listed on the Global 500. And we are also the third highest income of the internet company in the world. And from our company established until now, the gross merchandise volume has increased by 100,000 times. And for last year in 2020, our annual net revenue has already achieved 7 billion RMB, with more than 330,000 formal employees participating and more than 23,000 selected business partners cooperating. Our retail business has been empowered by our competitive supply chain system. And JD.com is the only one company who owns the 6 intelligent supply chain network, from small to medium to large parcel network and cold chain network for the fresh goods, and also B2B, B2C, and auto network as well. And totally, we have more than 500 logistics centers with more than 6 million delivery lines in the operation. That's why during some special period like last year, the COVID-19 China lockdown and the Chinese Lunar New Year special time, lack of labor, we are still able to fulfill consumers' orders and delivery parcels on time. For the fresh business, we have been investing a lot on the expanding the cold chain network, like establishing the fresh fast inspection laboratory and using the cold box to deliver fresh goods orders in order to ensure the product's safety and freshness, like some short life goods like cherry, blueberry, all of them, we use this kind of cold box to do the delivery. And currently we own 18 cold chain centers and could cover more than 300 cities. That means that actually means the majority of mainland China. And for our users, we focus on those consumers, we call it high quality consumers. Most of them are living in the tier 1 and tier 2 cities in China and with the middle to high income. Actually, accurate positioning target consumer segment also help both of us and growers to get a higher return with the good quality products. And this flow is about JD Fresh operation conception. We are trying to create and educate our consumers the conception called from orchard to the dining table. You can see that from growing to circulating and finally retailing, we have been making effort on developing the standardization and safety in every step. And JD Fresh covers categories including fruit and vegetable, meat and egg, seafood, and etc. The growth rate of item volume achieved 300% already. That means we have been working for finding and launching new products, and innovation for the e-commerce business is very important. And this is about our direct model of the imported fruit. And we have directly cooperation with the grower and branding like Raspberry and Sunkist. And last season, we started direct import program of chilling cherry with Garces fruit, help them to promote their branding on our platform. It was really a good trial for both of us. I think chilling cherry is really an important program for all of the retailers in China. And for last season, we had a huge increase on the volume, sold more than 500 containers, and the gross merchandise volume around 500 million RMB. To review the recent fall season, from 2017 to 2020, we made an average compound growth rate at 80%, successfully created a super item. And last season, we also created a new record on the pre-sale promotion of chilling cherry, sold out 30,000 5 kg box in only 1 minute, and more than 200,000 consumers order. And we could really feel the passion from consumers on the chilling cherry item. For us, our chilling cherry program mainly targets on 4 points. And the first one is about importing directly. We have the program and plan with the exporter and grower, and we are trying to control the whole process. And we have packed the JD customized package to improve our consumers' experience. And you could see the 2.5 kg box and 5 kg box on the slide. And we are trying to expand the coverage in both online and offline business. For online business, we are famous at the self-operated business, and also we have the platform open plan business. And for offline, we have 7 Fresh supermarket business. And finally, it's about innovation. We have launched some innovative package like the cherry with blueberry, cherry with wine gift box to promote during the Chinese Lunar New Year, and let our consumers know more about the chilling goods. And finally, based on the previous season experience, we have some recommendation for the upcoming season for you just as a refer. And the first one is about quality. Like for us, quality always prioritized than anything. Last season, we all know due to the COVID-19 influence, the overall quality was poor, and we paid millions of dollars on that to implement promise with our consumers. And actually, no matter consignors to the wholesale market or directly to the retail, the final destination will be the single consumer. And we all know that it's really difficult to gain a new consumer, but it's really easy to lose a loyal consumer. So if we meet this kind of similar situation, it's better to control in the packing house, not in the destination. And good quality always leads to a higher return as well. And the second one is about package upgrade. And especially for the 5 kg box, the normally chilling cherry 5 kg box is now solid enough for the e-commerce business. And especially during the Chinese Lunar New Year time, and a lot of Chinese consumers do love to buy the 5 kg as a gift for their friends and family. And the current package could not support delivery directly. So we need this kind of cold roll box like I mentioned before. If this could be fixed in Chile, and it would be helpful for those e-commerce retailers in China who do not own the self-operated supply chain system. And the last one is about our vision on the cherry category. And we could see there is a shortage in China market from the September to October. And after the California season finished, and people are waiting for the chilling cherry. And if could select some premium variety, apply the greenhouse planting technique to make the season longer, also could offer our consumers more choice. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you very much, Una, for your great summary presentation. Thank you very much. And if you could stay on for our questions from the audience, which we'll have after the following 2 presentations. Thank you very much again. So now we'd like to present Mr. Jason Gillespie from Shopkick to give us a rundown on the US situation for e-commerce.
Well, Sharif, thank you for that. Y a ustedes en Chile, es un placer presentarles esta información sobre el mercado aquí en los Estados Unidos. I am going to continue in English to save you from my high school Spanish, but it is great to be here, and I'm going to speak a little bit about Shopkick and about what we see regarding trends here in the United States. I don't see my slides, and I don't have them memorized, so if they could be on the screen, that would be awesome. Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. So just as a quick background, what is Shopkick? Shopkick is a shopping app, which means it's an app that consumers are actively using while they're in stores. They might use it while they're online, though I think primarily the usage is more in store, which allows us to do something interesting, which is turn the in-store experience into a bit of an e-commerce experience. Even though the channel may still be in the store, the data and the way it works is all in the app. So it marries some of digital with some of traditional. And as was mentioned previously, a large portion of the fruit that's transacted in the United States is still in physical stores, in addition to the smaller but rapidly growing segment that is online. So we provide an app in order to give consumers rewards and a fun experience. And for brands and retailers, we try to drive sales of your products in a specific retailer. Next slide, please. Here's an example of what it looks like if you're a shopper. You can see that this app works across a bunch of different retailers, which means it could include superstores where fruit is sold, like a Walmart or a Target, but it could also include your favorite local or regional retailer that's just grocery specific. So no matter how you want to use it, there's a bunch of retailers in there. There's opportunities for shoppers to earn rewards, which we call kicks, at each of these retailers. And they earn that from money that they spend online or in the store. So it's an omni-channel approach. And users also spend a lot of time in our third tab, which we call Discover, but it's really an opportunity to engage consumers about your brand, about your product. If you wanted to have what we call a lookbook in there that showed information about the growing cycle and how what's fresh in the summer in the United States, is different because of the seasonal differences in Chile. So when it's winter in the United States, for example, the apples or the blueberries that you might be enjoying would be fresh because they're coming up from Chile. Next slide, please. So we use a reward mechanism that we call kicks. You earn kicks, and kicks allow us to offer incentives to our users for taking all sorts of different actions. We can use those kicks for users to look at information about your product. This is an actual example from a campaign for blueberries, not Chilean blueberries, sorry about that, but these were blueberries from the US Blueberry Council, where they wanted to show some of the ways that you might use blueberries, such as with pancakes, in order to motivate consumers to want to buy this particular product. You might see how they're featured within the app. And then an actual, what we call scan tile, which is where consumers can get kicks for just picking up the product and scanning the barcode or scanning other information about the product. And then finally, validating that the purchase occurred, giving more kicks back to the consumer, which gives them strong rewards for purchasing these specific products that are in the app. And then it's fully validated because they take a picture of the receipt, which is then transcribed through an OCR process and matched back to the specific SKUs that consumer purchased. So it's a closed loop system all the way from building awareness to engagement to transaction. And hopefully the consumer then enjoys it and comes back to buy more of that product. Next slide, please. I sort of hinted on this in my previous statement, but we measure everything throughout the entire transactional loop that the consumer goes through, whether it's the content they're looking at, how they engage, and ultimately that transaction, so that when you look backwards, which we often call sales attribution in both the digital and traditional spaces, we have real strong attribution metrics that are quite common in the digital space, but are less common in the physical retail space because you don't normally have data around those touch points. Next slide, please. So one of the most interesting things about the Shopkick data set is that we can bring to the table extensive data around how people are buying things at physical retail, in addition to e-commerce, because we're capturing all these receipts. We're taking data that used to be locked away by the retailer, locked away by Walmart, locked away by Ralph's, locked away by Trader Joe's, and we're making that data our own property. Because once you submit that receipt, it goes into our database and we can then use it however we wish. And what we've decided to do is do an analysis of that data in order to understand consumer trends and in specifically how consumers are purchasing fresh and fruit within fresh. And what you can see here is that we believe perishables are actually driving a huge number of the trips to store. It's actually a reason that traditional grocers even continue to exist. If you think about the outer edge of the store where all the healthy stuff is, like the fruits, the milk, the meat, then you have the inner part of the store, which is all the stuff in boxes. If we all just bought things in boxes, everything would be e-commerce. But because people still want to pick that apple, they want to look at those blueberries, they want to pick those bananas, because a banana is not a banana. And what I mean by that is not all bananas are created equal. I might want a banana that's a little more on the ripe side because I'm going to eat it in 15 minutes. I might want some bananas that are more green because I'm not going to eat them for 4 days because I only shop once a week. It's that sort of ability to pick your specific fruits that are driving those trips to the store. And we see that here when we look at the percentage of receipts that contain one or more of selected categories. For fresh fruit, it's over 1/4 of receipts. For fresh vegetables, it's about 1/5 of receipts. For dairy, it's over 1/3 of receipts. And for any perishable, it's almost 1/2 of all receipts have a perishable item on it. Next slide, please. So even with COVID-19, again, we have the Delta variant. We have a lot of concern, especially here in Southern California, where I am, other parts of America. Florida has a lot of COVID right now. People are still going to the store. They're probably being very careful. They're wearing masks and doing things like that, and they're getting vaccinated. But nonetheless, it's that fresh fruit and fresh food in general that's driving those trips to the store. The left chart here, we looked at how many different types of fruit do we see on a receipt, because we wanted to understand, are people just running in and grabbing bananas and running out? That doesn't seem to be the case. Oftentimes we're seeing more than one different type of fruit. It's averaging about 1.5. So we're seeing plenty of receipts where folks are in the store and they're buying 2 types of fruits, meaning bananas and blueberries, or 3 types of fruits, meaning bananas, blueberries, and apples. And that's on a basis, based on the right chart here, of about 10 items, 10 distinct items on average on the receipt. So fruit is showing up, it's showing up materially, and it's showing up with multiple different types of fruit on each receipt. Next slide, please. We dug into detail in a specific retailer, which is interesting, called Trader Joe's. It's been a high growth retailer, even though it's been around since the 60s, was recently bought by a German company in order for them to get a strong foothold here in the United States. It's a smaller format retailer that still has everything you need, a lot of private label. We dug into them because they're known as a good place to get strong value on fresh fruit. And in fact, they often stock fruit from all over the world because it's not seasonal in the United States in winter, especially, and it's called Trader Joe's. So if you're not familiar with them, look them up. They're a huge success story. One thing about Trader Joe's, they're very private. They don't want to say anything about what they're selling. Great news, Shopkick knows what they're selling because we have all those receipts. And we did an analysis and we wanted to sort of verify that the mystique about Trader Joe's was actually true. And indeed, our receipt data supports that. It shows that bananas, for example, are the #1 product. And we actually see that at a lot of retailers. Americans love bananas, and retailers know that, and they often locate them right at the entrance of the shop because they know that it's a driver. Bananas don't last all that long. And if you want them to last, you've got to carefully select them. They're a little more green. It's a very personal product to pick your bananas. Probably tells you what kind of person you are based on how you buy bananas. But bananas and organic bananas are right at the top of the list. And then avocados, which is another product that, we grow right here in the United States. You see them from Mexico. You see them from Chile. Lemons show up, limes, and then a bag of avocados in addition to individual. And in fact, of the top 50 products, 36 were perishables. So this particular retailer has been really successful on the basis of having awesome perishables. And they also give a strong value to consumers. They're not an expensive place to buy these perishable products. 15 of those 50 were in fact fruits. Next slide, please. And when we looked at what specific fruits, again, we talked about bananas, we see berries are also there, and then apples as number 3, grapes as number 4. This is across not just Trader Joe's, but all the retailers in the United States. And we think we're hitting probably 80% of the market with the data set we have, because we have the big boys like Walmart and Target, we have specialty players like Trader Joe's, and we have traditional retailers like Ralph's, Albertsons, Kroger, Publix, and all the major markets where produce is sold. Next slide, please. So an interesting analysis we did was we said, well, what about those crazy people out there that are going to the store and they're not buying any produce? As I joke, these are the teenagers who never grew up, because when you're 13, you don't want to eat fruits and vegetables, you just want to eat candy. There are some people in this world that apparently never grow out of that, because when we looked at that half of the receipts for those trips that don't have fresh produce, what we see is a lot of candy, a lot of beverages, some dairy, snacks, frozen items. So the interesting thing about that cohort is that's an opportunity. Those are the people who haven't yet sort of figured out that it's really great to buy produce when you go to the store. Doesn't mean they can or won't change. It could have to do with the freshness of the product. It could have to do with availability. And I think that's really where Chilean fruit comes into play. Most people like an apple. It doesn't have that strong a flavor profile. It's not like I'm asking you, to eat lamb vindaloo or something that's extremely spicy or something extremely unusual. I'm asking you to eat an apple. We've all eaten apples, but they might not be available because it has a season. And so Chilean fruit can help kind of fill in that gap regarding apples, and that might drive some of these non-produce buyers to buy more produce. Next slide, please. And then finally, we wanted to sort of drive home that point about produce is an opportunity in general, because when we look at how much someone is spending on a trip, which we call the basket size, we see that receipts with produce, the basket size is about the same as receipts without produce. And it leads us to believe that shoppers primarily work off of a budget constraint. They have a certain amount of money or dollars that they're willing to spend on a trip to the store. And so each decision, each time you pick up an item and put it into the cart or click the electronic cart, whether it's e-commerce or whether it's a trip to the store, that's a buy or don't buy decision. And what we'd like to see is more people putting produce in there as part of that decision, because we see that really produce doesn't necessarily make the cart bigger. It doesn't make it more expensive. It just makes it healthier, makes it better for you. And we think one way of driving that is sort of pre-trip consumer awareness, doing things like the lookbook and the Shopkick app, or other ways of getting the message out there to consumers that there is produce available and you ought to be buying it when you're at the store, and engaging consumers and building awareness so that when they're at the shelf, they're making the right decision, which is picking up those fresh products and putting them in the cart. So thank you. Look forward to any questions you may have after this.
Thank you very much, Jason, for such an informative presentation. Again, please stay on, because I'm sure there's a number of questions from the audience that they would love to ask you. So thank you very much again. So now, lastly but not least, I'd like to present Nelly Hajdu from the Freshfell organization in Europe. Over to you, Nelly.
Thank you, Christian, and thanks for inviting me to complete the round of e-commerce market in the Northern Hemisphere market. My name is Nelly Hajdu. I'm working as Director for Trade Policy and Business Development in Freshfell. Freshfell is the European Fruit and Vegetable Association based in Brussels. So we're representing round about 150 companies and associations all across Europe. And a very unique feature of our organization is that we represent the entire supply chain. So from the trader to the producer, we're really looking at the product and not at the different parts of the chain. And as such, I have the pleasure today to talk about the evolution of food e-commerce in the EU. and I'm very happy that we could hear the Chinese evolution and as well in the US, because I think the situation in Europe is completely different. Christian, could you move? So just a short roadmap. I'm trying to give you an overall picture of the e-commerce evolution in EU 27, followed by a broader insight into what we know about fruit and vegetable e-commerce specific in Europe. A little bit on how the market evolved during COVID-19, and concluding with a range of challenges we still will have to solve to make this market successful. Christian, you can move. So I wanted to give you a general picture because that gives you probably a better understanding of the general market. So first of all, we can really say that e-commerce has arrived in Europe. People in Europe are buying online, be it groceries, be it electronics, be it clothes. But we also can really say that the COVID-19 pandemic has had similar effects than they had in China or the US. So if you look at the lockdowns across all European countries for several months, many of the shops, except the grocery shops, have been closed. So you only could buy clothes online or electricity. And this is reflecting in the market figures. So by now we can really say that 72% of all European inhabitants have been shopping at least online once in 2020. And we can see massive increase in general in e-commerce revenues. The UK is a very good example, has been already starting with a high maturity of e-commerce markets, but still increasing its e-commerce environment by 37%. I wanted to also already give you food for thought. In Germany, we look at a 67% increase of revenue on e-food. This is very specific, and you're going to understand it a little bit later when I'm coming to the shopping infrastructure in Europe. So as everywhere else, driven by lockdowns and health considerations, but we also have the problem that it's very hard to get a unified picture of the e-commerce situation in Europe, because we have 27 member states, everybody's measuring differently, and that makes it very hard to say, this is a leading country, this is less mature, and so on. Christian, next one. So I just give you a quick example of the leading annual average spendings. As you can see on the right side, the UK is one of the leading countries where e-commerce has been arriving in society. The average consumer is spending €1,000 per year for online shoppings. Sweden, Germany, Spain are all quite successful e-commerce markets, but you can see throughout the entire chart that there has been a general increase throughout all European countries during the pandemic. The next slide, it's not representative for Europe, but it gives you an idea where we are with regard to the channels where we shop online. So it's a very conservative environment still. So Jason, I was very impressed by the idea of pre-tripping. You get a push and say, buy fresh produce. I think we are far away from this now. We're still in a very conservative environment, buying in online stores, with physical retail stores, going through search engines. I recently have been listening to an e-commerce presentation on China where people said it's already the third wave of e-commerce starting to go into the social commerce. I think we are in the beginning, but not yet at a level comparable in Asian countries or the US. Which leads me to the fruit environment. So this is a very specific environment. I think that will really help to understand why e-commerce in food, and in particular in fruit and vegetables, is not at the success level as in other regions of the world. And the main thing is the shopping infrastructure and availability of food. So if you live in Europe, you have a shop around the corner. You can be sure that within 500 meters to 1 kilometer, you can walk and get your fresh food. Online delivery had so far not have been having the ability to fulfill that desire. So if I want an apple, I go out of the door, I go to the shop, I buy it. And And given this shopping infrastructure, the cost efficiency ratio of the deliveries to the doorsteps never reached the level of just getting the stuff in the shop. A second element, this is very similar to the US, the consumers like their haptic experience. They want to smell and see the produce and don't want to be surprised. Well, also this is changing. So we have a lot of initiatives, online bio e-commerce boxes where you get rescued fruits, and which are very successful. So it's not just niche, but very successful companies. Other than in China, for example, we don't have this kind of specialist domination of certain companies who have professionalized their distribution system. So I was very impressed when Una said we have really import plans with specific exporters. This kind of structure is not existing in Europe yet. And certainly also the structure of our urbanization is a little bit different. We don't have these exploding regions, so people can still go to the shops. It's not very far away, and people are also having a different way of working and living here. So looking on this, if we move to the next one, Christian, we have been asking ourselves 2 years ago, unfortunately, so pre-COVID, but with very important key learnings also for the market evolution right now. We have been asking ourselves, okay, what do we actually know about fruit and vegetable e-commerce in Europe? So we have been teaming up with the OECD to look at various aspects. Kristen, you can move to the things. So we were thinking, how can it be that we don't know anything about the market and how fruit and vegetables are purchased online? So we had to do really grassroots work. And we have starting with a little investigation, and we came to the conclusion that the only way to do this is by counting. So we were taking the assumption that given the maturity level of the European market, there will be not more than 50 to 100 online shops in our sample countries we have been choosing. That was very positive, but it kind of fulfilled during the counting process. So we have been selecting 7 countries and really going by online search and a specific range of search keywords, such as buying fruits and vegetables online and so on and so on, which we followed in a very strict manner. So we had a range of how to count to really ensure the comparability. And we did this for 7 countries. That was the first element. After we had this counting done, we've been classifying. Yeah, I'm done in a second, Christian, then you can move further. So after we had the counting done, we have been classifying by the source. So where is it coming from, the deliver option, and the target markets. And we also checked something specific, and it's a good start into the European regulatory environment. We were having a look on marketing standards. So now you can move to the next one. So what we found was quite interesting. So as you can see on the right side, we have been classifying the online shops by several categories, among them online retailer with target of the private consumer and delivery option. The same for retail shops, for agricultural producers, for B2B suppliers, and interestingly, we added some categories we hadn't foreseen beforehand, such as citizenship initiatives. So what we found was for our 7 sample countries, we could really classify 51%, so it was really half-half, 51% of the markets offer were retailers and online retailers. Among them, traditional retailers, but also pure online shops, startups, and so on. The other side, and that surprised us a lot, were agricultural suppliers. So farms, citizenship initiatives, a lot of them also with a focus on organic. We could see that there was a difference between the maturity rate of the Western and the Central European market. So the average size of online shops before the pandemic was around 100 per country in Western European countries versus around about 30 in Central and Eastern European countries. Key elements we found were, and I'm going to come to that in the next slide as well, the market was very fragmented, highly diversified. There was a lot of, it was really a market for organic and niche offers. So also offers which connected good agricultural practices, in Germany, Demeter labels, and so on. One of the major elements was that before the pandemic, it was really on an amateur level, and partially we found quite dodgy online shops where we didn't know who are the owners, who is behind. And we see it's a mainly B2C market. So we don't see a big evolution of a B2B market in Europe for fruit and vegetables. Kristen, you can go to the next one. So what you can see, we have taken 7 countries and conducted the counting for each of the countries in the same level, and made a comparison on the majority and distribution. So starting from the left to the right, what was very interesting is if you look into the German e-commerce market, there was a huge offer for buying directly from farms, be it organic, be it conventional, be it Demeter, be it any kind of organic certification. That was the major dominating offer we could find. So there were a few traditional retailers, and the rest have been really farmers offering their produce. In Belgium, also in the Netherlands, we saw some more retail affinity and a more mixed picture. In France, we saw a similar situation. So we saw a lot of agricultural suppliers, but also a good equilibrated balance of retail shops. In France and in Spain, we saw in particular that not just the big chains were opening online shops like Auchan or Mercado, but also the little corner shops were starting to offer delivery services. So your corner shop just around the corner was offering on his website baskets which you could put together and then they would deliver to you. So what we see here, and you see it on the colors actually, it's a high diversification, high fragmentation, and it's very hard to grasp this market and to have a unified idea of the European e-commerce market. Christian? Yes. So just in a nutshell, I'm not going to go into the details for everyone, and I'm pretty sure this will be shared afterwards for more study. But you could really see the tendency for each of the countries, which has been the defining characteristic we found during the research. I want to highlight because some of the elements we saw in the beginning, so pre-COVID, and we've really finished the study in December 2019, so a little bit unfortunate, but also very interesting to see that some of the elements which have been dominating the market before have been professionalizing throughout the COVID pandemic. For example, in France, the drive or click and collect model has been increasing during the pandemic and even professionalized. So I'm gonna come to that in a second. In any way, as I said, high fragmentation, mainly private consumer, a lot of lack of structure and transparency, where the product is coming from, where it's going to, also diverging approaches on the labels on organic, for example. So it was completely differently displayed in France than in Germany. So that makes it also really hard. And what we found, and this is something maybe very European, there was at least pre-pandemic, when everybody was going to the office, we could order for the offices baskets of fruits. And these baskets of fruits, they had the issue that they were never, if you ordered them online, you had never a labeling of origin. So we never knew where these products were actually coming from. So you see, it was a wide range also in a regulatory gray area. Christian, the next one, please. Just a few words on the delivery structure. So 62% of the deliveries were very traditional doorsteps deliveries, but nearly 21% have been collecting point models with growing size. And this has been in particular driven by France, which really established a habit of click and collect models. But also we saw a few hybrid models which offered both, in particular, little corner shops in Spain and France who have been basically putting this as their third offering together. Next one. I tried to keep it short and very uncomplicated. Part of our study was as well to look at a specific article which is required by the EU Marketing Standard Regulation, which requires for certain product defined to show the origin, the class, and the variety. And there has been a lot of discussion around, because retailers, for example, they say, for us, it's impossible to display the origin at the day of shopping, because maybe a week later we don't have this in our stock, and then we need to change the origin. And then what then? Is this a betrayal of the consumer? Or does the consumer care? Can the consumer at the doorstep say, no, I don't want this because it's not a Chilean apple, it's an Argentinian apple? So there's a huge discussion around this. So we were checking how compliant these online shops were in displaying these origins. And actually the coverage was not that bad. And in particular, the big retailers were challenged, but the smaller ones, they actually were complying. And you see here that there is also no division Central Western Europe, but it really depended on the country how it was displayed. You can move on. So moving to the next one. Yeah, so that for me, it was still important to show you all these figures, because what we have been seeing from this momentum, where we came to the conclusion that the EU fruit and vegetable market is at a very starting point with regard to e-commerce. And we also came to the conclusion that it was not us, the fruit sector, driving this, but rather startups, innovators, retailers. Suddenly the situation changed through the COVID pandemic. And we see here, and we still have the problem of missing data, but we can at least see for e-food that there has been a massive increase of e-food sales. And you can see throughout the various countries that, in particular in UK, it's around 8.8% of the total retail revenue is e-food. In France, it's also 8.0%. In Germany, 1.4%. But as you could see, it's 67% in a growth. So we started with 0, because in Germany, nobody would have ordered food online. So we see really e-food rising. But we also see continued trouble of capacity and logistical constraints. So something we had pre-pandemic continued also during the pandemic. We definitely could see the increase of purchase baskets and the rise of ready-to-eat meals. So I think there's a big potential. It was number 2 of online orders all across Europe. So not necessarily the retail basket, but the out-of-home consumption. Christian. Nonetheless, we have some national differences, and this is really a read-through slide, just saying that what we could see throughout all the countries is that all of the retailers and the existing players have been challenged by the COVID-19 pandemic and the sudden increase of demand of fruits and vegetables and food in general. But we saw as well a lot of collaborations with regard to logistics, with startup deliveries and so on and so on. So we had Deliveroo cooperating with Aldi, and this is something what is very new to Europe or in the European market, that there are a lot of startups coming. So Gorillas, for example, is doing a very aggressive advertisement, offering that you could order tomato at 11 o'clock in the evening. But we also have models like HelloFresh, who give you a box full of products where you could cook your food ready with all the produce together. So concluding, we have a rising e-food market, but we have a few challenges on the business level as well as on the regulatory side. So one is definitely logistics and capacity, and still the cost efficiency ratio. So fruit and vegetables long-term will not be a standalone product. So there will be no online shop for fruit and vegetables, but there will be part of the bigger retail basket. but still they will also have the problem of ensuring the quality and the food safety. I think this is a major constraint for moving here forward, and also satisfying the consumer. Packaging, and I'm happy Una has been sharing a couple of things. I think this is also a debate we're having in Europe. So first of all, sustainability and environment. So how can we make sure it's not too much packaging and it's in line with protecting the environment, compliant with regulatory environments such as the EU Single-Use Plastic Directive, which forbids single-use plastic. The shopping experience needs improvement. I think these startups are pushing it. And we, of course, have regulatory challenges such as the marketing standards I've been mentioning, the food safety environment, all of this. And what is very unclear at European level as well is who is actually allowed to sell fruit and vegetable online. So this has never been defined. It's a widely unregulated space. So everybody could open an online shop and sell it from the seller. There would be no constraints on that. So these are debates which will be following us into the next year. And this is also my closing point. So there has been a rise on e-food, but the question is how sustainable will this be for the future? And we can not say this by now. Many thanks, Christian. I'm done.
Well, thank you very much, Nelly, for a very insightful analysis of the European e-commerce market. Thank you very much, Nelly. Now I'd like to invite our panelists back. If you could turn on your videos, great. Our colleague Karen as well, because we've received quite a few questions from our exporters and growers. We reached during this conference almost 126 participants, so that's very good. And I'll start off with one of the questions that has been repeated quite a bit. Probably maybe first directed to Una, in regards if you could give any specific recommendations about the packaging requirements for e-commerce channels like Jingdong, whether it be in terms of sizes, colors, formats, or even whether an exporter of fresh fruit and chili should be packing for the end consumer or packing for the distributor.
Yeah, actually, I will first answer about the package problem. Yeah, until now, we can see the feedback from consumers. They do love the chili and cherry 2.5 kg and 5 kg box. And we could directly sell this kind of box, no need to do any repack. And we just need to repack to check about the defection, but we will not to like change the package itself. But about the color, you know, the chili and cherry selling season is focused on the Chinese Lunar New Year. So maybe some, you know, the color in red, in gold, and will be more popular in the Chinese consumers. And for the material, need to be more solid. As you know, China is very large, and for some delivery orders, and maybe it may take 2 to 3 days from the warehouse to the consumer's home. And now the current package, if we use it directly, and when consumer open it, would be some rotten, decayed, and they will not be satisfied on that. So if could upgrade the package to be more solid, and then we'll help those Chinese retailers who do not have the supply chain system. And yeah, and for other about the quality issue is actually it's for both. And maybe for some growers, they are thinking the cherry is packed for the exporter and not for the retailer or the consumer. But actually, our final destination will be the same, the consumer. Only we like improve the quality in the packing house, and then we could reduce the defection and also reduce the complaint from consumer as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Una. Jason, Nelly, Karen, would you like to comment or give your own perspectives on what are if there are any specific packaging requirements for e-commerce channels?
I don't really have anything there personally. I think that the comments Una made probably apply everywhere, right? Your packaging needs to minimize rot, it needs to minimize degradation, and taking into account the time distribution from the distribution center to the consumer, usually 1 or 2 days in most US areas.
Thank you.
And I think the only thing I would add is that looking at the US specifically, there are a lot of different demographic opportunities within this market. So just getting back to the cherry situation, we have some large Asian populations in the US. And as Chile seeks to expand their marketing of cherries in this market, there could be some unique packaging opportunities for Chinese New Year in this market as well, not just in China. And we actually have some delivery services that are focusing specifically on large Asian markets throughout the US. So there are some interesting things for us to explore with cherries and possibly with some other fruits as well.
Thank you.
The only other comment I'd make is there is starting to be an undercurrent of interest in the US consumer, more and more where things are coming from. More laws are being passed. It's becoming more prominent. And to the extent that Chile has a quote unquote sort of good brand, people know Chilean wines, they know Chilean fruit. You know, it's a country that people are generally on good terms with. I think that could actually be an advantage to the extent you work Chile into the packaging.
I think I can not add so much to this debate because I think the European consumer for fruits and vegetables is not that keen on the outside appearance, but it's really looking on the product as far as our experience so far is going. So I think the challenge we have with packaging is more, how can it ensure that the product is safe, fresh, and good in quality until it arrives at the consumer. And in particular, and this is something to take into account, is that this year the single-use plastic directive has come into force. So single-use plastic is forbidden with a few exemptions. So the solution needs to be now found how to make the product good without having this opportunity to use this material.
Thank you very much, Nelly. Another question that popped up from the audience is in regards to the organics category. I remember yourself, Nelly, and Jason, you mentioned the organics. What is the situation currently in terms of demand for organic produce, maybe apples, kiwi fruit, etc., via e-commerce channels within your own specific markets?
I mean, in the US, I'd say it's increasing substantially. And even on the e-commerce, but also in regular retail, there used to be an extraordinary price difference. And that has come down over time. Part of that is because of imported fruit being able to help bridge that gap between the organic supply not being sufficient, the homegrown US supply not being sufficient for the increasing US demand. Just yesterday, it was big news in the US, a specific pesticide was banned. People care more and more about this. You know, going from Trump to Biden pushes things favorable for organics because you've now got an administration that's less pesticide friendly. And more forward-looking, and so I think that trend is just going to continue to accelerate.
I would like to add to this US perspective. In Europe, we have two layers. So we have the consumer and a consumer demand, but we also have a regulatory layer on this discussion. So maybe first the consumer. I think we have a diverging consumer level in Europe on organic, and in particular the younger generations, those who are more aware, the Friday for Future generation, families, all of them are increasingly buying organic. That is for sure. Then we see the boomer generation, who is less prone, but also starting to create more awareness. So they're basically throughout the society an evolutionary trend towards organic. That's the one thing. On the other hand, we have the EU, who is really motivated to change consumer behavior towards more organic. Also wants to increase organic agriculture in Europe with certain thresholds and so on. And the big question is, if you're pushing the organic consumption into the middle of the society, how will you be able to deliver all these organic goods? So there is definitely a big opportunity in the European market in the next 10 years with regard to organic.
Una, would you like to compliment?
Yeah. Actually, JD Fresh, I think from 2 years ago, we started to sell some organic product like the organic kiwi fruit from Zespri and organic apple from New Zealand. And we could find that in China, if you want to promote the organic fruit, then you need to focus on the difference. You need we are trying to educate our consumers what's the difference with the organic fruit and with the normal fruit. Yeah, and recently we could find that especially for the domestic vegetable in China, organic vegetable is very popular. Yeah, but we are still need to work on that.
Sharif, I have just one thing to add. I think if you want to see the excitement around the organic produce industry in the US, all you have to do is go to the Organic Produce Summit in September in Monterey. This was started a few years ago, and I think everyone thought it was going to be this small regional trade show. And I went for the first time 2 years ago. They didn't have it last year because of COVID. And I couldn't even walk in the aisles. And there were retailers, there were retailers from across the entire country. Every single major retail chain, all the key produce buyers were there because everyone wants to see what they can do to increase this category, because they look at the numbers and they see that organic sales and organic volume in their departments are increasing at a much higher rate than conventional produce. So it's only going to continue to go up.
Thank you very much, Karen. Some of you spoke about, well, specifically Nelly and Jason, and also Una alluded to it, but the promotion of fresh fruit on e-commerce channels, and specifically the promotion of the origin of the fruit. How is that being managed today via e-commerce? Because we know we've had some comments by the participants in today's webinar that, for example, in some markets, we lose that country of origin labeling, as it were, whilst in others, no. What is the situation in your different markets?
Jason, you or me?
How about you? Because you've got 27 of them to talk about.
It's a very sad answer, Jason, because I'm so impressed how the promotion for cherries, the Chilean cherries in China works. I have not seen anything on promoting the origin of the fruit in Europe at all online. I'm sorry to disillusion. I saw some approaches from Zespri, New Zealand, to push some kiwis on Instagram, but that was on my private channel. And a part of this, I didn't see anything. No retailer is doing major promotion campaigns. We are not at this stage yet. So I think in Europe, people are still trying to figure out how I'm getting this product to the consumer without losing the quality, and maybe even managing it to bring it on the same day. So I think they're not yet there to really engage in this kind of promotion activities online. It's just not there, basically.
Thank you, Nelly.
So my view would be that it's an opportunity probably for the fruit and really any produce, but for the country, because I just did a quick check like on Walmart.com while Nelly was answering. And when you search for fruit, they show stock images of a box of strawberries, a box of blueberries. There might be an opportunity for you to go to that retailer, that e-commerce site directly and say, hey, I want a big banner that says fruits from Chile when someone searched for fruit, because retail media is one of the fastest growing segments of advertising media in the US market. And those retailers have realized that they're not just an e-commerce site, they're a media platform. They're the new media moguls. And being able to strike deals with them to highlight the fruits from your country and then having the linkage right to it, and of course the sales attribution for people buy it, is probably a large opportunity that seems to not be tapped right now.
I would like to add something on Europe now that I was thinking about it as well. I think in Europe, we need to be very careful about the idea of promoting origins, because you have two groups. You have the boomer generation. So if we can say this like this, so the boomers who are very they have a big price affinity. So they're looking on the price when they're buying, not so much on the origin. Then you have the generation who's starting to buy online, who's using social media, but this is a much more aware generation who's looking a lot on sustainability, on do I really have to buy a product which has been shipped over the entire ocean? So this is increasingly dominating the debate throughout all European countries. So I'm not sure if then you promoting a certain origin is the right way to go.
Thank you very much, Nelly. Karen, you had a...
It just, I think this is, we could have a webinar just on this because it's a big topic. This is very challenging for a lot of retailers. Retailers are trying to get their heads around e-commerce, but they haven't quite figured out the best way of marketing fruit on their websites. So this is a problem. If I go to my local retailer and I want to buy grapes or apples, there are numerous varieties there, right? So I go into the supermarket and I see at least the names of the different varieties. I might see some information about the different varieties, like how it tastes, what makes it unique, what makes it different. At the very least, I can see it and see how the apples differ in appearance or how the grapes differ in appearance. When I go to a retailer's website, often I will just see red grapes, green grapes, black grapes, and that's it. There's no additional information. So it's very challenging for the consumer and it's challenging for the marketer to really differentiate their fruit. So obviously we're working with numerous retailers in the US to, as Jason said, put up banner ads, have online programs where we can communicate about Chilean fruit. But of course, all of those cost money. And we can sponsor something for a week or two, or maybe 3, but then what's happening throughout the rest of the year? So a few people have mentioned Zespri. You're seeing Zespri because Zespri is putting money into it. So what we're trying to do is work hand in hand with retailers to show them the importance of including more information, whether it is about the taste or the seasonality or where it's from, because that's all going to help their sales. And that shouldn't always have to come from us and be sponsored and paid for by us. But my final point is this is why we're so happy to partner with someone like Shopkick, because Shopkick delivers all of this relevant information. So if we're doing something with citrus starting in September, people will be able to see information, learn about the nutrition, see recipes, and really get motivated online to go in store and make that purchase. But yeah, there are numerous opportunities here and we realize the challenges and we're trying to address it as best we can.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thanks. Una,
So Karen, thank you for that. Yeah, one last point. A huge growing segment of produce consumption is what we call farm boxes. In my house, we get a 25-pound box from local farms every 2 weeks. Now, they market it as local and fresh, but you could take the same approach even from things that might be farther away. You do have that trade-off where people are concerned about, carbon that's required to move things from point A to point B. But the trade-off would be if I can get an organic box of fruits and I could make the argument, well, I'm maybe reducing pesticides and somehow the carbon isn't that much more if it's transported efficiently in some way. If you warehoused enough Chilean fruits in the summer, you could have like a summer farm box that would come in the winter. Then you'd be selling direct to consumers. So there might be opportunities for you as a country if you built sort of a mini supply chain, in key target markets.
Thank you very much, Jason. Una, did you want to complement?
Yeah. Yeah, like for JD.com, we are doing a transparent platform. So if you search like the fruit on JD.com, you could clearly see where it is from, especially after the COVID-19 and, a lot of consumers are worried about it, and they are becoming more and more sensitive. But from the sales perspective, sometimes the retailers really need the who could represent the country and to promote the fruit in the sales market. We could see that the Chilean fruit has been making a lot of effort on that recently. That's why in the China market for the Chilean cherry, blueberry, and the stolen fruit, the sales is very good because we are trying to cooperate together and to educate Chinese consumers that which season should eat what. It's very important for the fruit business. Yeah.
And just on that response, Una, do you see as a platform in China as an opportunity to have, for example, Chilean cherries and other cherries available during 12 months of the year?
Actually, for the domestic cherry, we know that for some premium variety, they could do the whole season planting and offering, just depending on the volume. And to be honest, maybe for some months it's lack of cherry, but the price is high as well. So it's like a supply and a demand balance. But there is need. You could see China market is very, very big. So if you have the product and then you have the market. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to come up with just a few final questions. The last one here we have in regards to the current situation of a lot of congestion at ports, internationally speaking. Has that affected, obviously, the supply chain to the different e-commerce channels where each of you represent? Una, would you like to start off first?
Yeah. After the COVID-19, we have suffered a lot for, the containers always delay, usually from 5 to 15 days. Yeah, that's the real thing we meet. And also it may be challenged for the short shelf life product like the grape. And I think maybe cherry in the future as well. So for us, we are thinking that at this kind of special time, and the quality in the packing house will be much more important than before, because you will meet a lot of challenge after the container's arrival. You do not know when the customer clearance will let the consumers out. Yeah. And another thing is try to contact with the retailers directly to hear in the sales market where they are really need. And sometimes if the retailers give up on a product, that means that the life will be short. You could see after COVID-19 the salmon in the China market. And at that time, a lot of retailers choose to stop selling salmon, and then the sales decrease a lot. But the similar thing happened, during last year for the Chilean cherry, but the people are still buying. The final thing is maybe for the Chinese consumers, they are not really believe on the fruit where they are from, but they are trusted the platform they are familiar with. Yeah, that's from our side.
Thank you. Jason, Nelly, Karen, would you like to chip in?
I can be very short.
Sorry, go ahead, Nelly.
I'm super short. We had a little bit of supply issues in the first 2 weeks in March 2020. And as of April, shops were full, e-commerce shops worked fine. And neither import nor domestic had been really troubling. Jason, that's it. I said I was short.
No, you really were. Nice job there. Yeah. In the US, I would characterize it as two different situations. On the front end, the consumer impact seems to still be modest. And that's probably because we have a lot of homegrown supply when it comes to food. We're a net exporter. But boy, when you look behind the scenes, everything is gummed up. There are more ships waiting to unload at the Port of Los Angeles than there has been at almost any time, something like 35 ships. I live near the beach. I can look out and all I see are ships out in the ocean. That's not normal. I don't normally see ships. I usually see a sailboat or two. There's 35, huge container ships sitting out there. Restaurants can't find people to work in them. Delivery trucks can't find people to drive the trucks. There's a shortage of school bus drivers in the United States. So we have a fundamental disconnect in this country right now between the labor that's ready and able to work and willing to work and the labor need. And that'll solve itself over time. But right now, everything is gummed up that relies on labor in the US market.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think exporters and the receivers really need to look at how they're going to ship their product and where they're going to ship it over the coming months, because everything that we are hearing is that the ports are just as bad as they were 6 months ago. I'm speaking more specifically about LA. And people think it's not going to get better until maybe February, March, April of next year. So we had a lot of challenges last season, and we will likely have those same challenges this year, further exacerbated, as Jason said, by all of these other logistical issues and labor issues. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much to all of you. I think it's been a very interesting conversation. There are a number of other different questions, but just looking at the time, I think we have to start wrapping up. So on behalf of our association, I would really like to thank you and appreciate your time and effort in putting together these great presentations, which I'm sure have given our exporters and growers some very interesting insights into the world of fresh produce, but from an e-commerce platform perspective. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for the invite.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Muchas gracias. Recordamos a todos los asistentes que enviaremos la presentación y una encuesta para que nos llenen. Agradecemos su participación. Thank you, Sharif and Karen, for coordinating everything. Nos veremos en un próximo evento, webinar ASOEX Sin Fruit. Buenos días todavía.
Muy buenas tardes.